Is everybody going to tie along? Everybody ready? Everybody got the right stuff? We're going to tie a sparkle dun today, and you can kind of tell that I like the sparkle dun because, can you see that? I don't know if it's in the frame. You don't, is that in the frame? No. Yeah. You don't put something on your arm permanently unless you know you're never going to regret it. And I know I'm never going to regret having a sparkle dun on my hand. I don't think it's funny because I don't think I told the originators of this fly, Craig Matthews and John Jurassic, both of whom are friends of mine. I haven't talked to him since I got this tattoo, and I don't think I told him I got a sparkle dun on my arm, so I can't wait to tell them about it. But speaking of John and Craig, let's talk a little bit about how this fly was developed, because it kind of shows you how fly patterns evolve. And the sparkle dun is really based on a fly called the comparadun that was invented in the 1970s by Bob Nastasi and Al Cucci. And it's a brilliant fly. It's a great emerger. It's a great dun. It's durable. It's relatively easy to tie if you have the right material, the right deer hair, and it just works really well. Floats well. You can roll cast it and it'll float. It's just a terrific pattern whenever trout are eating emerging mayflies or adult mayflies. And what they did to develop this sparkle dun, they basically took the comparadun that was developed in the 1970s, and instead of having split hackle tails, which is what the comparadun has, they added a shuck of Antron and created a new pattern. Now, the comparadun, the one with the split tails that was developed in the 70s, was actually based on an old Adirondack pattern developed, I think it was either by Francis Betters, who was a great, the late Francis Betters, who was a great Adirondack fly tyer, or maybe it was his father. But it was a very big, scraggly fly. It had a tail of lots of deer hair, and then it had a body of fur, and I think it might have been dub snowshoe rabbit fur, and then a great big, scraggly deer hair wing, and they fished it in size 8 and 10s, really big flies in the pocket water, and it's still a great attractor fly. And Cucci and Nastasi saw that fly and said, "Oh, we can make a little more elegant mayfly imitation out of that fly by neatening it up and kind of evening out the deer hair and slimming down the body." And so instead of being a big attractor pattern, this fly became more of an imitator for fishing during hatches. And then Craig and John out in West Yellowstone from Blue Ribbon Flies changed the fly from more of a mayfly dun or adult mayfly into an emerger by adding the shuck. It still works for a dun. Lots of times what happens during a hatch, and you'll see this if you look down on the water, the mayflies will be floating on the surface of the water, and if you look carefully, you'll see a lot of them are still trying to get out of that nymph shuck, and the nymph shuck is still stuck to the back end of the fly. Trout know that this fly is not going to get away. It's easy prey, and so the addition of the shuck often helps the effectiveness of the fly. So that's the fly. You fish it as a dry fly. I don't think it's a particularly good attractor pattern. It's more of a fly for hatches. It'll work as an attractor pattern, just fishing it blind over faster water. But it's more of an imitative hatch matching fly. The old haystack, the big old fluffy haystack, was a better kind of attractor pattern. But this is more of a fly for mayfly hatches, and because of that, you want to fish this fly dead drift. Whether you fish it upstream or cross-stream or downstream, you want to fish it on a dead drift, so you want to get a good natural float when you fish this fly. And you can dress the fly with, I put paste on it first, paste fly dressing, and then as it starts to sink, Sometimes I'll just let it sink a little bit and make it a little bit more of a merger. Or if I want it to float high and I need to see it better, I'll put some of that white silicone powder on it. So that's how you fish it. You really wait for a mayfly hatch and you pull out a sparkle dun that's about the same size and shade or color, if you want to get specific, as the emerging mayfly. And that's how you fish it. Now the hardest part of the sparkle dun, the only hard part, is the deer hair wing. And I know a lot of you have troubles and frustrations using deer hair. I get these questions all the time, spinning deer hair, making sparkle dun or comparadun wings. And I'm telling you, it's mostly in the material selection. I tie a lot of sparkle duns, and I have bags and bags of deer hair for sparkle duns. I mean, I'm not going to move the camera, but sitting over there is a box about this big full of deer hair. Whenever I go into a fly shop, the first thing I do is go to the fly tying wall and look at the deer hair. And if I see any that's even remotely useful for sparkle duns, I'll buy it. And I'll come home after every fishing trip with a half a dozen pieces of deer hair. And the reason is that certain pieces of deer hair are better for certain sizes of flies. So what do you look for in comparadun? Comparadun, you'll see this sold as comparadun hair, sparkle dun hair, or even ex-caddis hair, similar fly that imitates a caddis. But what it is, grab a piece here. This is a really nice piece. What you want to look for in this hair is you want the ends to be nice and even. If you can see that, it's hard. I know it's hard to see. You want the ends to be nice and even, and all deer hair has little black tips on it. You want those black tips to be as short and blunt as possible. And it's usually nice and fine and uniform, a good piece of hair. But, you know, this particular piece of hair is really good for 10s and 12s and 14s, but it's not so good for smaller flies because it's a little too coarse. And I have, here's a piece that's a little bit finer and is really good for 16s, 18s, and 20s. And I'll actually label it on the back with a waterproof marker, you know, what sizes it's best at. So I've got bags of this deer hair and I'll sort through it. And often if I find a really good piece for size 18s, just ties really nice with a size 18, I'll label it. So that's how you keep track of that stuff if you're organized enough. I'm usually not that organized. But when I sit down tie, for instance, when we're going to tie a size 14 tan sparkle dun that could imitate a light Cahill, a large sulfur, a Hendrickson. Honestly, when I tie comparaduns, I'm usually comparaduns. If I say comparadun, I mean sparkle dun. They're almost interchangeable. When I tie a sparkle dun, I try to tie it in a color that's going to imitate several species of mayflies or types of mayflies. So when I tie my size 14s, I tie them in kind of a tannish grayish. Maybe I'll throw a little pink or a little cream in there. And I can use it for a light Cahill. I can use it for a large sulfur or PMD. I can use it for a Hendrickson. I can use it for lots of different mayfly hatches. I hate tying a pattern that's just specific to one hatch because I might use it for one day a year and it's silly. So I try to make them a little more generic. I tie them in olive, I tie them in rust, I tie them in cream, I tie them sometimes in a creamish gray, and of course I tie them in kind of a yellowish orangey olive for PMDs or sulfurs. I mix mostly yellow, pale yellow, and just a little bit of orange and a little bit of olive. And that seems to be good enough for most PMD sulfur hatches that I see. It's close enough for the fish. I think shade and size are a lot more important than getting the exact color. Although there are people who will tell you that you've got to have this exact color for this particular hatch. I'm not so sure I agree with that, but you know, these are really good anglers that will tell you that. So they could very well be right, and I could be wrong. So, shall we tie a sparkle done?
We have a couple questions.
Okay, questions. Love questions.
All right. Deer hair, mule deer or white-tailed deer? And that comes from Ed.
White-tailed deer is much better for this. Really good question. Mule deer often has very long black tips, and although you can tie these flies with it, they look kind of scraggly. I don't use mule deer for anything. I don't find any advantage to using it. White-tailed deer is really a better deer, and there's so much variety on a white-tailed deer. There's all colors and shades and sizes on a piece of white-tailed deer. So I would stick with whitetail if you can find it. If all you got is mule deer, try it. See how it works. Yeah, good question. Good question.
And then the other question is, how long does this take you to tie?
I don't know.
We'll find out.
If I'm just tying for myself, this fly would probably take me, I don't know, 2.5, 3, 4 minutes, depending on if I make any mistakes or not. We're gonna go much longer than that today, but these are pretty fast. Once you get the right deer hair and you get all your stuff lined up, this flies pretty fast. But don't forget, I used to be a commercial tyer, so when I was a teenager, so I still have that kind of commercial mindset, and that's not what you all want to do. Most of you want to sit there and relax and enjoy it and take your time. So the time that it takes me to tie one shouldn't have any bearing on the time it takes you to tie one.
Okay, this is actually a great question, especially given our current times. Josh is asking, what do you think the best fly to tie with little materials? So kind of like the scrappiest fly you could put together.
Well, I hate to think of the scrappiest fly that you can put together because it would take all the fun out of it. I mean, basically, the waltz worm, which is a deadly fly, is basically hare's ear on a hook with a bead. You can't get any easier than that. I suspect, and I know, that you could dub a little black fur on a hook and fish it during a midge hatch and catch fish, because I've done it. But it's not very satisfying. So,
and to be fair, I added the scrappy part that Josh just asked the best fly to tie with little materials.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of flies with little materials, and I really think that the less complicated flies are more effective. The less stuff and the less parts you have on a fly gives the fish fewer things to find wrong with your fly. So I've gone more and more. I've gone to very simple flies for my own fishing. When I'm out trying to fool a fish, I want to use the simplest fly I can, and most of my flies are pretty darn simple.
Okay. So, Antron's asking if you like cripple patterns.
Yeah, but that I don't see the people talk about cripples, and I don't see the difference between an emerger and a cripple and what people call a knockdown dun. When these insects are hatching, some of them are emerging and they got that shuck hanging on them. Some of them are fully emerged and they're riding upright and pretty on the water on their tiptoes and their tails raised in the air. And some of them fall down sideways. They just get knocked over. And whether it's a cripple or an emerger, I don't know. It depends on the time of the hatch. A fly that's a cripple now, 10 seconds from now, might fly away, right? So I don't hold a lot of stock in worrying about whether it's a cripple or an emerger during a hatch.
Okay, and Edward's asking, do you ever tie them in olive shades?
I tie a ton of them in olive shades. Absolutely. Yeah, I've got lots of olive compare duns or sparkle duns in my box. It's a great, it's my go-to during a blueing olive hatch. It's my go-to fly. They're a little tougher to find the right hair for those size 18s. But yeah, absolutely. And I'll show you an easier version too for the smaller flies when we get into tying them.
Right. Donald's asking if do you ever spin antelope hair?
Yeah, I do. I spin antelope hair, but antelope hair is very, it always has broken blunt ends, and it's very soft, and it's not very durable. And I thought that maybe if I could find some really good antelope to tie sparkle duns, that I'd use it. And I actually worked with a guy that runs a tannery out in Wyoming to get some antelope hair, and he sorted through it for me, and I got a whole bunch of pieces of antelope, and they never quite worked out as well as white-tailed deer. Just didn't work. Now you can use elk hair if you can find, and I'll show you when we get into the close-up there, if you can find some fairly fine elk hair, fine bull elk in particular, or light elk, elk hair can work. It's a little stiffer than deer hair, but you can use elk hair as well. And you can use synthetics. I'll show you a synthetic version of this too once I sit down on my vise here.
This is an interesting question. Dan's asking, is there a fly, for example, like a simulator that's just too complicated to be worth tying?
I think there's a lot of them that are too complicated to be worth tying. I think a lot of these big articulated streamers are too complicated. It's my opinion, right? Just my opinion. Way too complicated, way too many steps to be worth tying. And some of the foam-bodied grasshoppers and dry flies with all the eyes and the feelers and all that stuff, I think are way too complicated to bother with. I mean, they're fun to tie, but it's more like scale model insect building than it is fly tying. But again, you're getting my opinion, right? I'm more into simple patterns, simple but elegant patterns, which the sparkle dun I consider very simple but very elegant. And when it's well tied, it's a beautiful fly, but it's just not complicated.
Right. And okay, Mark's asking, and I think we'll need some clarification on one of these words for the general public.
I might be able to figure it out.
Would you use CDC instead of deer hair? And I just want to clarify that the CDC is not the CDC that we're talking about in common times.
No, CDC. Cul de canard, which is feathers from the rump of a duck that are very soft. You can use CDC. I don't like it because you have to cram an awful lot of it in there, and it's not as durable, and it doesn't float as well. It gets waterlogged quite quickly. So yes, you can use CDC in this pattern. Makes it pretty easy to tie, but you might have to use 3 or 4 or 5 feathers to get a good enough wing profile on it. So CDC I think is better for emerger patterns where you want the fly to ride lower in the water, but you could use CDC, yeah.
Okay, and Michael's asking,
Sorry, you're breaking up there, Julia. Julia, I lost you.
Really? Am I here?
You're there now, yep. Julia, I lost you.
Oh, shoot. Okay.
Say it again.
Is it okay to use regular deer body hair on a sparkle dun, and will it float the same as hair labels compare done?
Regular deer body hair, like you'd use for bass bugs or muddlers, you can do it, but it's going to look like hell. It's going to look awful. You can't get that nice wing profile when the hair is really coarse. So you can use it, try it, especially for bigger flies. You know, if you're tying to imitate a big size 8 or 10 mayfly like a green drake or a March brown, you could use deer body hair. But you really want to get this finer hair, which comes from the mask of the deer, from the face. It comes from the shoulders, and sometimes it comes from the legs. But the deer belly hair, which is the body hair, is quite a bit coarser.
Okay. And Alan's asking, I have an is it good for this fly?
Yeah, you could use it for the body. Yep, you could use it.
Okay. Sean's asking, generally, what size tippet do you generally use with size 14 fly?
I usually use 5X for a size 14, but if I'm fishing small stream and the fish aren't, there isn't a particular problem with drag and stuff, I might go 4X. And then there are times on flat waters where the fish are really snotty when I will go to 6X on a 14 fly, which is kind of outside of the tippet range that you would put on a 14, but sometimes it makes a difference in getting a good float, getting a drag-free float. So, but mainly 5X on a 14 would be the one I'd go to most of the times.
Okay, and similarly, Roger's asking, what sizes do you tie in this fly?
I tie this fly in size 10 through 18 with deer hair. If I'm gonna tie a little tiny one, I'll go with a synthetic. I'll go with EP fiber, or you could use CDC. It's just you can't really get good. I never found good deer hair that'll tie a size 20, but you can get down to 18s okay. I'll show you some 18s that I tied earlier just so you can see what they look like.
Great. Tim Johnson's asking, what are your indicators for when you choose nymph versus emerger versus dun? Rise form, or when do you switch?
Well, I'll use a nymph when there's nothing rising. And if I see an occasional rise, I'll probably still stick with a nymph. Especially if it's splashy rises or very erratic rises, I'll still stick with a nymph. And then if I see fish if it's the beginning of the hatch and fish are just starting to rise, I'll put on an emerger. And I'll often fish an emerger all the way through a hatch and never go to a dry fly. Never go to a full-on dry fly. But there are times, for instance, late in the hatch when there's just a few bugs on the water and you're down in the tail of the pool, the flies have hatched up on the riffle and there aren't any emergers and there aren't any flies with shucks. All the flies that are on the water are either knockdowns with tails instead of a shuck, or they're just sitting on the water and they're fully emerged. Then I might go to a Capara-dun pattern or something without a shuck later in the hatch. But I find that I can get away with a sparkle dun as soon as fish start rising right through the hatch. And that's why I like it. I don't have to change flies. As long as I get the size right and the shade right. And the presentation right, most important.
Okay, and speaking of that, Antron's asking, do you prefer to have your fly high on the surface or slightly into the film?
I like my flies in the film, unless the fish tell me different. If in normal circumstances, I like my flies in the film because it looks more like an emerger. If the flies are getting blown around or they're skittering across the top of the water and the fish are slashing at them, then I might want my dry fly to ride higher. But for the most part, I like it sitting in the film. I like the fish to be able to see more of a profile and see something that may be in trouble, crippled or emerging or something.
Okay. James is asking, do you ever use light fluorocarbon for tippet on dry so it sinks to better hide the tippet?
Yeah, I think fish can see tippet no matter how fine you go and whatever material you use. And I typically don't use fluorocarbon on dry flies because it makes them sink. And the invisibility factor, is it less visible when it's underwater than when it's floating on top? I don't know. There's a lot of debris in the water and spider webs and stuff, and so the tippet, a floating tippet doesn't seem to bother the fish. I don't particularly worry about whether my tippet floats or sinks, so I don't use fluorocarbon because it's more expensive and it sinks. So I don't on dry flies. But I know a lot of good anglers that do use fluorocarbon on dry flies and believe in it, are really good anglers. So it's just a matter of opinion, just what works for you. try both. The tippet is not that expensive that you can't experiment with nylon and fluorocarbon. You know, fluorocarbon, yeah, it's $10 a spool, but it'll last you a while, and you're going to use it for nymphs anyway, so why not try it? Why not experiment with it?
Okay. So, Alex is asking, instead of tying in different Z-Lon chucks, would it make sense to tie in white and have a few permanent markers in the vest to change up the shuck color on the river?
Yeah, that's a good idea. That's a good idea. I don't, but it's a really good idea. I think Antron holds a permanent marker pretty well. I've never tried it, but you know, I like almost all my shucks in brown because most of the nymphs are brown, and so I don't worry. The shuck color is pretty standard throughout the mayfly world, and they're usually darker than we think. When we see the shucks on the water after the fly has emerged, they look really pale and tan. But when the shuck is still attached to the back half of the mayfly, it's often quite dark. So I use a kind of a darker brown. You'll see what color I use for my shucks.
Okay. I think that's all the questions we have for now.
Okay, let's tie. So avert your eyes because things are going to move around while I readjust the phone here. So hang in there and don't look because it's going to get wobbly. Any questions while I'm adjusting my lights?
We actually have an interesting question. With harvesting and tanning your own deer for deer hair, is it better to harvest later in the season when the deer's coat is thicker?
I don't know. I'm not sure. It might be for comparidons, the early season deer might have finer hair, and it might actually be better for comparidons. And I've often thought that fawns would have really good comparidon hair, but not many people shoot fawns. So, but I think if I could get some fawn fur, I would use it in a heartbeat.
No.
Yeah, Bambi on the vise. Yeah, I think. If anybody's ever tried fawn fur, let me know, because I just think it would be awesome.
Okay. I don't know if you can answer this if you want. I don't think any of us have any plans in general, but Thomas is asking if you make striper plans this year.
If I what?
Plans.
Striper plans?
Yeah.
No, I don't have any striper plans. I'm hoping to go striper fishing, but that's going to depend a lot on the state of the world. I love striper fishing, and it's going to kill me not to be able to do it. That's in focus now, right? I think once I move, it's auto-focusing on the background, but that looks good there, right? No, wait, I have never been able to enjoy the treasure of fishing the Iowa driftless, and I would like to fish the driftless someday. Okay, so we're going to put a size 14 hook in the vise. Ooh, that's in the wrong box. There's a 14. Everybody ready? Everybody ready to tie along? Okay, here we go. So this is a size 14 big eye. I really like ring eye hooks, and I like the big eye. It helps me thread them a little bit better. So I'm using a big eye size 14. See how close we can get this. I can get this. I'm going to see if I can get this a little closer. That still looks in focus, doesn't it? Yeah. Okay. Backdrop. I see it. Thank you. Was it Chris? Yeah, thank you, Chris. What's that?
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, no, you can hear me. Okay.
Yep.
I was trying to...
Now you're breaking up. But I can read the questions now. Okay, blue background, Mark. Thank you. I always forget that, don't I? I'm going to have to write that on my... Maybe I should have that tattooed on my arm, too. Okay, so I'm going to start my thread, and I'm using 8-0 brown. This is going to be a tan sparkle done, because I can use it for lots of different stuff. So I threw a little pink in it because Hendrickson's going to be our first hatch here, and I'm going to be fishing close to home, so I expect to be fishing more Hendricksons than I'm normally around for. And then I'm going to take my Antron and not my Antron, my Z-Lon, sorry. Antron or Z-Lon works for the shuck. This is Z-Lon. And you can buy it in an assortment like this and get all these cool colors. You can buy them from Orvis, and there's free shipping right now. So good time to get yourself some Antron. And I'm going to cut a small piece off the end. Fairly short. And then I'm going to take some for the shuck on this fly, and just about maybe half a hook gap or something like that. You don't need, I don't know how much you need for the shuck and how much is best. That's kind of a scraggly shuck, but that's okay because you don't want a ton of this stuff on the back. So I'm gonna just measure that about a shank length, maybe a little shorter. Then I realize I got to bring my thread back to here if you're tying along with me. Do I use a rotary at all? I use a rotary, Chris, to inspect my fly from all sides, but I don't tie rotary. When I grow up, I'm going to learn how to tie rotary. It's one of the things I want to do. So there's my shuck, and this stuff is very easy to work with. You just kind of hold it at an angle facing toward you and just let it roll on top of the hook shank and then wind forward to about halfway. That's interesting, Michael. I have a foam core backdrop that is black on one side when tying light color flies and white on the other. Helps the eyes. Cool. Good idea, Michael. Michael, you're just full of good ideas. So that's never going anywhere. It's not going to pull out. I'm going to trim that flush. Not much there, so I don't have to trim it at an angle or get fussy about it. Then I'm going to come all the way up to the eye with my thread. Just a couple turns just to get that shank covered. And then I'm going to come back to about maybe a quarter of the way back on the shank, maybe a little bit more than a quarter of the way back on the shank. Right, hard to see there, right about there. Right about there. And then I'm going to select my deer hair. So when you tie these things, there's no shortcut to finding the right hair. When I sat down to tie these sparkle duns, I auditioned. Let me just hold them in the other hand. It's hard to get in here. Oh, I dropped them on the floor and in the trash can. Anyways, here's one. Here's one of them. I auditioned probably a half a dozen. First, I went through my pieces of deer hair, and I auditioned a half a dozen different pieces of deer hair to get the right piece. So, it's what I keep saying is that the selection is really important. The selection of of deer hair is really important, and there's no shortcut to having a lot of deer hair. If you're going to have to buy this deer hair through the mail or through the web, what I would advise you to do, and I'm not trying to overload you, is to get 3 or 4 pieces, because you're going to get different textures and different colors, and there's just no way around it. If you're going to tie these sparkle duns in lots of sizes, you're going to need a lot of different pieces of deer hair. It's the material that I agonize the most over. And as I said, I buy deer hair all the time, and I still haven't found the perfect piece. So I'm going to take some of this deer hair, and you want a fairly good amount. Yeah.
So it's not the sink drain.
Okay.
We took it apart, I cut it apart, I put a Y in.
Yep.
That's all clear all the way to the main, but that 3-inch main is plugged.
So how are we going to fix that?
Did Door pump the septic?
Yeah.
They didn't jet it?
I don't think so.
You might want to have them come back and jet. There's a clean out right there at the 1.5 inch that I just put in.
Yeah.
I would say have them come back and run their line jetter down. I'm guessing something got backed up in that main.
Yep.
And it's plugged it up.
Yep.
So.
Okay.
Sink drain's good and clean.
Is it running okay?
No, it won't run because that 3-inch is backed up.
All right.
So I don't know.
Okay.
So yeah, it's affecting your sink and your.
Talking to your plumber?
Yeah. Sorry, guys. I'm talking to my plumber. Okay. Well, thanks, Sean.
Yeah, we'll see.
All right. Sorry about that, guys. I had a sink problem. So anyway, that's a fair amount of deer hair there.
All right, Tom, we've got some questions.
Okay.
Does the eye of the hook make a difference on how this fly floats?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think it does. It might, but not in the grand scheme of things. Now I'm going to clean out this deer hair, and the first thing I like to do is kind of tweak it a little bit just to get some of that fuzz out of there, and then hold it by the ends and pull the fuzz and all the short hairs out of there. You can use a comb too. You could use like a dog flea comb. Where is mine? I can't find it. It's behind the backdrop. So anyways, you could run a comb through there just to get all that fuzz. It's going to stack better. And you don't have to stack these wings if you don't want to, but it looks prettier if you stack it. So I'm going to stack it. So I got my stacker here, and I am going to place the hair inside the stacker and just make sure that it doesn't get caught on the edges. Drop it in carefully. Then I'm going to wrap it on the table. And then I like to help even it out, I like to spin. That kind of helps it not stick to the sides. And I'm going to wrap it again.
All right, Tom, we've got a couple questions when you're ready.
Okay, go ahead.
Thomas asked, he said, how do you fish before the hatch occurs? Wet flies, nymphs, I always wonder the best way, or prior to the hatch.
I usually fish relatively unsuccessfully before the hatch, especially the Hendrickson hatch. Everybody says, oh, the fish are eating nymphs before the hatch, and sometimes it's pretty good, and sometimes it's pretty slow. So I'll try everything. I'll try a nymph deep. I'll swing a wet fly. If I see an occasional rise, I might swing a wet fly or a soft tackle, or fish an emerger. But always. I don't have any good solid answer for that. Best set of flies to have for the southern Adirondacks for the next month or so. Jared, I would advise you to maybe get a hold of the Orvis endorsed guide in the Adirondacks and ask him. It's always best to have local knowledge. Okay, so now I'm going to carefully pull the stacker out, and you can see that hair is nice and even there, and I'm going to carefully grab it with my fingertips. And then I'm gonna measure this. I want it to be about a shank length. And that's about right. And I'm gonna bring it up to the tie-in point. And I'm just gonna take I'm gonna put my finger on the far side so that hair doesn't roll. And I'm gonna take a bunch of very tight turns in the same spot. Really crank down on that. Now you've got a mess. And then I'm going to cut this deer hair at a little bit of an angle, and you're never going to get it all in one swipe, I don't find. So you're going to have to come in and give it a few trims. You want a little bit of a taper to this so you can taper your body easily. And this is why I have a rotary vise, because I can go in here and get rid of some annoying hairs. So a lot of people have trouble with this wing rolling around the hook when they tie in the hair. And here's an easy way to mostly avoid that. Instead of winding back over that bunch, go all the way to the back of the hair and secure that first, and then move forward. And you want to put a lot of as much pressure as you can on here. This will make a more durable fly, and it will give you a nice taper to your body, so I don't have a big bump there behind the fly. So that's the key, is to not wind back, but to jump back to the back of the hair and then wind forward. And that seems to keep it from rolling pretty well. Now I'm going to take this whole wing and I'm going to raise it up and push it with my finger. And I'm going to pull it back with my fingers, and then I'm going to come in right in front of that deer hair, right up against it. And I'm going to wind a little ramp there. I'm going to go back and forth. This just helps you get a nice taper. The thing about these sparkle duns and comparaduns is that you need to have as much thread in front of the wing as you do behind it. And I know this seems like a lot of thread. It's 8/0 thread. It is not going to make the fly any heavier or affect the floating qualities, but you've got to have that. You've got to have that support in front of the wings, because if you don't, you'll tie it and it looks beautiful, and you'll come back a couple hours later and your wing will look like that. It'll be forced over the hook, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because then you can just preen it before you fish. And I always preen these flies before I fish them. But if you look at this dead on, what you want is you want that hair to flare almost 180 degrees, because it helps balance the fly. So you want it spread all the way across there, and you can, kind of move it into place like so.
Okay, Tom, we've got some questions.
Okay.
Miguel's asking, what?
I lost you. Let me see if I can read it.
What fish is it especially for?
Pardon me?
What fish do you use?
This fly is, I only use this fly for trout. Just trout.
David's asking, can you use 6-foot thread instead of 8/0?
Yeah, you can, sure. I like 8/0 because I can it hides my mistakes. But sometimes the deer hair is a little coarse, and 6.0 is fine, particularly in the bigger flies. When you get down to 16s and 18s, you're probably going to want to stick to 8.0. But and the 8.0 is really strong. I mean, you saw the pressure I put on that deer hair with 8.0. Yep. So one of the things I'm going to do to help me is I'm going to pull this, even though I want this wing to stick straight up, I'm going to pull it forward to get it out of the way when I wind my body. And then if there are any errant hairs, get rid of them now, because things are not going to get any better. So just trim them off and get rid of them. Now I'm going to go back to the bend, and I'm going to take my, this is synthetic superfine dubbing, or Spectrablend Dry Fly Dubbing that I've mixed myself. I mixed a couple colors in there. It's kind of a tan and a little bit of a kind of a pinkish shade to it. But you can use straight tan or whatever you want. And I'm going to take, again, if you've watched before, I'm going to start with just the smallest amount of dubbing. Got some deer hairs in there, just a little bit of dubbing. And I'm going to, that's too much. So I already started with too much, but what I can do is I can tease it out a little bit. Now you can see I'm starting with a really thin amount of dubbing. And then I'm going to add a little more dubbing, and I'm going to not use much more, but I might overlap a little bit just to get this a little thicker. Now, you want, believe it or not, you want a double taper on a Comparadun, when you Comparadun, Sparkle Dun. You want a double taper. You want it kind of thicker in the middle, and then you want it kind of even, thin and even for the front half, so it's the bottom part of the thread here, because you've already got a little taper under there from where you tied in the wing. So you don't want to make that too bulky. And yeah.
I have heard of people adding float in the tying process. Is this a good idea or just an old flyer's tale?
I don't know if it's a good idea or not. I don't do it. I do it on the stream, but a lot of people do it. Yeah. I want to tie flies. I don't want to be dipping them in goop when I'm tying. So I don't do it. But yeah, you could do it. Certainly could do it. Not a bad idea. Now I'm going to start winding, and when that first turn of dubbing touches the hook, then I'm going to go forward, and you're going to get hairs in your way, and you got to move them out of the way. So I'm trying to get a nice taper here. Mayflies do have a little bit of a taper to the bodies. And then when I get behind the wing, I'm going to pull the wing back, and I'm going to come around in front and wrap a couple turns of dubbing in front of that wing. But don't rely on the dubbing to hold your wing in place. It'll help, but you've got to have that thread dam prior to winding the dubbing in there. So there's basically a finished Sparkle Dun. Not that hard. I'm going to put just a touch more dubbing on there, just to finish it off. And the nice thing about this fly too is you can wind right up to the eye, because you got no hackles sticking in the eye or anything like that. So, it's a nice clean fly. You never have junk in the eye on this fly. There, a little bit better. I mean, the mayflies do have a thicker thorax, so it makes sense to give it a little taper. And now that eye is nice and clean, and then I'm going to whip finish. Julia, you're breaking up. Can't hear you.
Oh, no.
Now I can hear you.
I said, Callan's asking, do you prefer dry or gel float?
I didn't catch that.
Callan's asking if you prefer dry or gel type of floatant.
You know, I'm going to tattoo this on my forehead. Because I answer it every session, but it's a question that confuses people, and here's what I do, and here's what most people do. They put gel floating on at the beginning when they first start fishing, and then if the fly is not floating properly, they put the dry white desiccant powder on the fly. That's how most people do it. That's how I do it. That's how most people do it. You could start out with the dry fly desiccant if you wanted to. That'll work. But you can't put the gel on after the fly is wet. It will not work. So if you put gel on, it has to go on first. And you can see I'm fussing with this thing. And when I take this out of my box, I'll always kind of preen it into shape before I cast it, because sometimes they get crushed in the fly box. What size? Somebody asked what sizes. I fish it based on the size of the mayflies that are on the water. So this time of year, it's a lot of 14s, the 16s, and 18s, but could be smaller later in the year. But it's really based on this fly is really based on what's hatching. So I tie them in all the sizes that I think I'm going to need. I saw a question about Antron versus Z-Lon, and I'm not sure what the difference is, but Z-Lon is a little nicer to work with and behaves a little nicer and gives you that kind of scraggly look. Antron's a little finer and maybe doesn't support the back end of the fly as well. So most people use Antron or Z-Lon, but you could use Antron. There's something about this yarn that sparkles or looks like a shuck. I'm not sure what.
Okay, Tom, can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear ya.
James is asking, have you ever pre-treated the fly?
No, I don't. Didn't I answer that? No, I don't pre-treat my flies. But you can. Perfectly okay. Michael, I would not use a loop knot on a big eye hook. I don't like loop knots. I almost never use them. Especially on a dry fly.
And what is your favorite dry fly box for these guys?
A compartment box. Not a foam strip box, but a plain old compartment box like that, so that they don't get crushed. There, plug for TCO. Hi, TCO. Because Orvis doesn't sell a compartment box. So I have to go to TCO to get my compartment boxes.
Okay, Thomas asked, how about snowshoe for the wing?
Yeah, snowshoe works good. I'm hesitant to mention snowshoe because it's really hard to get snowshoe rabbit, and I don't want people running out trying to get snowshoe hair because it's tough to buy, it's tough to find. Let me show you what these flies look like in a smaller size. Here's a size 18 for like the paralep. Or let me get it on the other side so the light doesn't. So there's a size 18. And what I did with this one is actually I had some nice hair for size 18s, but it was very light. And this fly has a dark wing, so I just hit this wing with a permanent marker to darken it up a little bit. And then, for the smaller flies especially, you can use a synthetic wing. This little one is tied with EP fiber, trigger point fibers, and it's really easy to work with. You can trim it to shape. It makes tying these flies. Let me put this in a pair of forceps. It makes tying these flies really, really easy, and I think it's almost as effective as deer hair. There's a little synthetic one.
Gil said that he's using a unique thread. He's been having a waxing before using a small beeswax candle. Seems to have it. About waxing.
If you dub properly and you have decent dubbing, you don't need to wax your thread unless it's really squirrely really rough dubbing. But it's fine to wax your thread. It helps with dubbing, but you don't need to. I mean, this thread is pre-waxed that I have. This thread has a little light coat of wax on it, but it certainly isn't enough to really dub over. But yeah, you can use dubbing wax. It's fine. How about calf tail for the shuck or tail, Christopher? I don't know. It's worth a try. It's not. Yeah, it might work. Calf tail might work.
Okay, this is an interesting one.
Sorry, I lost you. Julia, I lost you. Julia, can't hear you. Now I can hear you.
Okay, what's it called? The sparkle done.
Why? Because it sparkles. I don't know. Because it sparkles. Because of the sparkly tail, I guess. Instead of a comparadun, which has just hackle fiber tails. Sparkle yarn is another word for Z-Lon or Antron, so that may be why it's called a sparkle dun. Any other questions?
No. Oh, what's the
Sorry?
What's the tail?
What's the tail? I lost you.
Oh, no.
Okay, I got you again.
What is the tail made out of? Someone's asking.
Z-Lon yarn.
Okay, great.
Z-Lon yarn.
I think that's all.
Okay, you're breaking up anyways. I'm losing.
Oh, sorry.
Totally losing you. Can the synthetic be used in the larger sizes as well? Yeah, it can be used. Yeah, you can use it in the bigger sizes too. Yeah, it works great. It works great. Not sure if it floats quite as well as the deer hair, but it's a lot easier to work with, and it's convenient. You don't have to worry about getting the right size deer hair. So yeah, colors, whatever, John, whatever you want to imitate, that's the color you use. Tan, olive, cream, yellow, dark rusty. You know, it depends on what mayfly is hatching. So it's a hatch matching fly. So you want to imitate whatever hatch matching. What color EP fibers to match the wing, John? Mark, generally the EP fibers, a dark gray or a light gray, depending on whether the wing on the mayfly is light or dark. But again, you guys want to investigate what you think is going to hatch in your local streams. Look at a picture online of that particular mayfly, and then choose your colors based on that. Or if you're on the river and you see a particular fly, just match that. Go home and tie something to match that up. If you're tying before a trip, research what hatches you might expect to see, and then tie those appropriate sizes and colors. All right, guys. Well, if there are no more questions, I'm going to go deal with some plumbing issues. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for being here today and tying with me. I hope you tied some beautiful sparkle duns. And if you didn't, I hope you practice and tie some beautiful ones a little bit later. Thanks, everyone. Very funny, Michael.